Hello, welcome back. Dr. Doyle here again. Now I'm going to follow up on my previous video about MATLAB scripts and talk a little bit about functions in MATLAB. First, giving a brief overview about built-in functions, and then we're going to transition into creating our own user-defined functions. So MATLAB has many built-in functions in MATLAB here, and show you really quick what something you can do. If you type help LFun, that stands for elementary functions, it is going to pop up a list of all of the elementary math functions that are available in MATLAB with links on how to use them. So that's one really good way to start to get familiar with any of the functions you need in MATLAB. Use the help menu. It's there for you and it's quite robust and good. You can see there's some exponential functions, there's all the trig functions, there's complex functions like absolute, and then basic data analysis, which we'll get into a little bit later. Okay. So MATLAB functions, to call a function, no matter what the function, there's three pieces. You need to give it a variable name on the left-hand side, you need the equal sign, you need the function name, and then you need the input arguments. As an example, let's say I wanted to do the absolute value of 4, and I can do this by typing in test equals ABS, because that's the function for absolute value, and then the input of 4 in parentheses. So I'm going to show you piece by piece each of these. So output is just the variable name that you assign to the calculation, just like we did the expressions earlier. If you don't put this value in, if you don't type anything, it's going to just do answer, just like previous. So let's look at that. So if I go back to my command window, if I type absolute 4, it says answer equals 4. If I want to save it into a variable named test, I have to call it test. Okay. The function name in this case is ABS for absolute value. Sign was the function name previously that I showed. And then our input arguments is the number 4. So MATLAB, some few notes on functions. So some functions require multiple input arguments and just to kind of tell MATLAB more information, or it requires a vector of data to output one value. Most functions, when you input a vector, it's going to apply the function to every number in the vector, to every element. Let me say that again. For most functions, inputting a vector applies the function to every element in the input vector or matrix. That is not true for some of our data analysis functions that we're going to get to towards the end of the quarter. So for example, if I say test2 back in my MATLAB is equal to the absolute value of 4, negative 4, 5, negative 5, 6, negative 12. So that's a vector which has 6 elements. It's going to give out a vector of equal size that applies the function to every element. Okay. So there's lots of built-in functions, but sometimes as a user we want to create our own functions. And there's a way to do that in MATLAB. It's very powerful. So to do MATLAB built-in functions, this has evolved a little bit in the newer versions of MATLAB, but I still like to follow the original structure of user-defined functions in MATLAB. So now you can actually put a user-defined function within another script, but we're going to practice keeping them separate in their own file for now. So a user-defined function is a special script file that defines a new function. To create a user-defined function, you must follow the proper format, which I'm going to tell you about. I'm not going to make you just guess. Number 1, you need a function definition line that always looks the same. Looks like function output equals my function x. Now, let me clarify something here. It takes the same structure every time. The only word that has to be there exactly as I've typed here is the word function. So you must start with the word function. MATLAB's going to turn it blue. The rest needs to be match the function name, right? You don't want to always call it output in my function. So just like the built-in functions when you use them, you want to have this output variable. So output is a variable that defines what's coming out from the function. Okay, what value are you feeding back into the main script or command window? Then you need a function name. You can call it my function, but I recommend that you actually name your function something that mirrors what you're trying to do. I'm going to show you an example in a minute where we find the area of an ellipse. And then you have your input variable or variables. There could be more than one variable. Okay, so those are required. They're always required. Number 2, when you're done with your function, you must have the word end. That's also going to turn blue. Number 3, the input variable and the output variable must appear in the script of the function. So that just means the main body of the function. Otherwise, MATLAB doesn't know what to do. And number 4, you must save this new script file with the same name as your function into the current MATLAB directory or somewhere where MATLAB always looks. Okay? So here's a summary of all of those again. And let's look at that. I'm going to put that last one back on the screen, again with our area of an ellipse. So I've already created a function here that determines the area of an ellipse. I'll make it this big. Here it is. And so here is my function file. You will see that it has that first line. It has the word function, which has turned blue automatically in MATLAB. It has something that I'm using as my output. I'm calling it area because I'm calculating area. It has the name of the function. In this case, I'm calling it ellipse. And it has these inputs. Now, I require 2 inputs here, R1 and R2, right? The body of this function is really quite simple. It's just one line calculating the area. And I just say area equals pi times R1 times R2. And then I have that word end. Okay, so let's see if I've met all these things. I have that proper function definition line where I say function, which is blue. My output is equal to my function x. Remember, output for me is the word area. My function for me is the word ellipse with a capital E. And then my inputs are R1 and R2. I have ended with the word end. My input variables, R1 and R2, appear in the body of the function. My output variable appears in this body of the function. Here it is. And then it's saved with the same name. So you can see here I have ellipse.m. That's the script file. Same name as the function. And it is in the current directory that I'm looking at. So how do I use this? Let's go back down here to my command window. And let's define 2 values for R1 and R2. And let's call that function. So I'm going to say, I'm going to actually first not give it any name. So I'm just going to say ellipse R1. I called it R1 twice, so that's not going to work. So let's change this and make that R2. And then I can do area ellipse R1, R2. I messed that up. It's not called area ellipse, it's just called ellipse. There we go, and there's our answer. So a few things here. What has happened is I have defined R1 and R2, and then I'm calling my function ellipse, and I'm telling it, hey, take this value that I have saved as R1, put it into the function anywhere that you see R1 in the function. And the same for R2, put it into the function, okay? And then calculate the area and pop that back out. Just like I talked about previously, when you don't name something, even when you call a user-defined function, the default is that word answer, which is where this came from. I want to show you something really quick because I think it can be confusing since I used R1 and R2 in the command window and they appear in the function as well. So let's say I called these A and B instead. So say I define A is equal to 12 and B is equal to 3. And then I calculate my AB area to be equal to ellipse AB. So in this case, I have passed A, the value of A, which is 12, in the spot of R1, and MATLAB has put it here into the calculation, and it has done the same for the number 3, which I have saved as B, put it here into the calculation, and then that's area, which is spit out into the command window and saved in whatever I called it, used when I called the function, which was AB area. Okay? I know this can get a little confusing. Some people love user-defined functions. Some people connect and identify better with the scripts. We're going to practice using both MATLAB scripts and MATLAB functions, user-defined functions, until we can become comfortable with both, okay? Because moving forward through your other classes, you're going to have to use both. You'll want to create functions that you use in other scripts and so on. So that is it for today, and I will see you next time.